Golden child slept with his brother's GF for a bet. Now he wants him back after years of no contact. My name is Daniel, and I'm 28 years old. I have a fraternal twin brother named Gavin. We were kind of close growing up, more like normal siblings. I always hear from other twins how they are super close and always were from birth. That wasn't us, but we also didn't hate each other. It had been all good growing up, but things started to change in the 6th grade. We didn't hang out much because while my interests matured, his kind of stayed the same. I got really into sports and shifted my friends group into the guys that also played sports. We also hung out with the girls a lot more often. Gavin just kind of kept hanging out with the same guys that still worshipped superheroes, anime, and spent all their time playing these weird board games or video games. I mean, their whole group only had like one heavy-set girl in it. By 7th grade, the differences between us really grew. I grew a lot, especially compared to Gavin. I don't know what he looks like today, but when we graduated high school, he was only 5 feet 8 inches and maybe 140 pounds. I was 6 feet 2 inches and around 190, all muscle. I could bench press 245 pounds, and my coach timed my 40-yard dash at 4.5 seconds. Only a couple of the linemen on the team could bench more than me, and I was the fastest guy. That's how I ended up starting varsity as a sophomore. I doubt Gavin could do so much as a pull-up back then. We were twins, but more like that movie with Arnold and the short guy. I always wish we would have been more like Van Damme and his twin brother from that one movie, but that just didn't happen. Anyway, back to 7th grade. Now I feel bad for what happened during those years, but I was just a dumb kid back then, and a lot of what I did was just normal kid stuff. I admit I did pick on Gavin, but it was mostly just joking around. A few things went too far, but I apologized and got in trouble for those things. It was all typical middle school stuff. My buddies and I would call him names sometimes or do little pranks. Like this one time. This guy passed out at a party and we pissed in his shoes. It was fucking hilarious. We were pretty good pranksters, but it was just ball busting. Nothing cruel. Me and the guys did stuff like that to each other all the time. Gavin always got upset though, and being 13, 14 years old, I didn't really get it back then. My parents grounded me a few times for that, usually after Gavin told someone at school and they'd call home. That didn't stop me though, and that went on all the way up to graduation. We just did dumb kid stuff. I just didn't realize how much it bothered him at the time. We grew more and more apart through high school. Once we could drive, he did pretty good at avoiding me. My friends and I still gave him shit here and there, but it wasn't anything too serious, usually just when we wanted a good laugh or something. Then I did the thing. I know this was bad of me, but at the time it just felt like a challenge. Senior year, Gavin got himself a girlfriend, Renee. They dated that whole year. Back then I thought she was pretty average. Well, prom rolled around and they went together. Seeing her really dressed up and everything, she looked better than average. That night none of us really said anything because we had our own dates and stuff we were focused on. It was the next weekend when my friends and I were hanging around. We drank 19 beers and half a fifth of Jose Cuervo. No limes, that night while playing Madden. Then Joe said that Gavin's girlfriend was actually kind of hot. We gave him a little shit at first, but then he said, "Yeah, I mean you saw her at prom. Yeah, she still got a dog face, but her body looked pretty good." We were just guy talking when Joe said, "Dude, you should totally sleep with her." I laughed and was like, WTF. But Joe was like, "Yeah, man, that would be like the ultimate burn. It would be hilarious. Fuck, I'll give you a $100 if you can pull it off before graduation." The rest of the night played on, but I was locked in on getting that $100. It gave me about 4 weeks to pull it off. I started out just texting. My brother didn't have any experience at all with girls prior to Renee. I had been pretty good with the girls all through middle school and high school. I played it right, just being friendly and flirty. She kept saying she shouldn't be texting me, but she didn't stop. She did not have a face to die for. So thinking back, I think she liked the attention from one of the hot guys at school. Eventually, I got out of her that her and Gavin had already had sex a couple times, prom being their first time. I had been worried that she was a virgin, which would have made getting her to give it up way harder. I used this as my angle and ramped up our messaging, especially after she admitted that her first few times with him hadn't been anything great. It was a few days before graduation. I knew Gavin had to work that night. I used that chance to invite Renee out, and she accepted. I played the night right with her, and eventually we ended up at my best spot for car sex. She really wasn't apprehensive. I kept selling myself as the superior twin, which I was. We ended up having sex in my car. I had won the bet, but I didn't want Joe backing out of paying me the $100, so I took a snap video when I was hitting it from behind. She didn't even know. I know that was bad, but really at the time I just didn't want Joe to try and go back on his deal. I didn't do it to be a creep or anything. I took Renee back home. It wasn't real late, like 11 p.m. or so. Gavin got off around then. I went to Joe's to collect and showed him the proof. A few of the other guys were over as well, which was weird for a Wednesday, but we had been out of school since the prior Friday and had been partying a little more than usual. He gave me the $100, and I told the guys how I pulled it off. That's when Joe said, "Man, send that shit to Gavin." I don't know why, but at no point did it cross my mind that this would be a bad idea. I just said, "Yeah, should I?" All the guys were like, "Fuck yeah." Just like that, I sent it to him. We all gathered around the phone to get his message back. Nothing came. I ended up staying over at Joe's that night. I woke up the next morning and was getting bombarded with messages from my mother. She was pissed. I got in the most trouble I have ever gotten in. My mom said that Gavin just moved out. She said that he told them what I had done, that he was tired of me being an asshole to him all the time, and wasn't going to live here anymore. Sure, it was a total dick move, but if you think about it, I kind of did him a favor. My mother also said that for some reason Gavin was blaming her and our dad for all this, and said they never do anything about me, which we all know wasn't true. I got in trouble all the time. Well, that was 10 years ago. We did find out from some people who knew Gavin that he went into the military. We just got an update last year that he was out and was living in Washington State. That's when I first tried to get a hold of him. My parents have been trying to get a hold of him since the day he moved out. He will not respond to anything. I just am not sure what I should do. I've told a few people about this over the years, and they say I should apologize now, but how can I do that when he won't talk to any of us? 10 years ago, my brother went out of his way to get my then-girlfriend to cheat with him. I had already planned on going no contact with my brother before this happened. My parents had not been great through our years. I intended to go low contact with them as well, but not completely cut them off. That was until the morning after that night. I had been with my girlfriend since the first week of our senior year of high school. I had always had a lot of anxiety built around the opposite sex. I just didn't know how to talk to girls. There was only one girl in our friends group, and she dated our other friend until they were 25. To the other four of us, she was just one of the guys. When I found out that Renee liked me, at first I didn't know what to do. So, I just went for it. I started messaging her on Snap. I must have done better than I thought because we were officially boyfriend and girlfriend a week later. It was a fun senior year. Renee and I went to all the dances together. She was in the band, so I actually went to some of the football games and basketball games that year. I did not enjoy being there. My asshole brother was always playing, and I preferred to stay away from him as much as possible. Still, it was worth it to see her. Prom rolled around and I was excited. We had begun with the I love yous months earlier, but had not gone all the way yet. Renee was not a virgin that night, but I was. She had a secret relationship with another guy in the band for 2 years prior to our senior year. It had ended over the summer. They both had somewhat strict religious families. I remember Renee wasn't allowed to date until she was 18 by their rules, so to her parents I was her first ever boyfriend. Her and that other guy had done really well keeping it a secret from basically everyone. That didn't really bother me, maybe a little at the time, but I was young. We had our first time on prom night. That kept up for the next 2 weeks. A week or so after prom I noticed she seemed a little distracted when we hung out. It was also less often. Our conversations were brief when we would message. I remember I was freaking out thinking she was going to break up with me. That night I had to work. I got off and went home. All was fine. I got home and jumped on WoW with a few friends. Then the snap from Daniel came through. It was a 4-second video of him having sex with Renee. I couldn't see her face in the video, but I knew it was her. The caption on the vid said, "I win again." I was completely heartbroken at the time. I cried that night and got no sleep. When I woke up in the morning, my mother could tell something was wrong. I told her what happened against my better judgment. They had never done anything about Daniel, not in the 5 or 6 years that he was torturing me. I thought maybe this would be it. Maybe they would actually do something. I was disappointed as usual. Not just disappointed though, I lashed out for the first time. My mother had said that Daniel was wrong for doing what he did, but that I should be thanking him for exposing that little slut. I lost it. I knew he did this on purpose. My parents weren't going to do anything about it. What were they going to do? He was 18 now and about to graduate. All these years their idea of doing something was taking away his car keys for a week, or not letting him go out one weekend. They always said that he was grounded for months, but that never lasted. They always gave in and let him off the hook. Him and his asshole friends had been calling me gay and telling everyone I was gay since the 7th grade. They didn't even call me Gavin. They called me Gavin. They would print out pictures of gay porn and put it in my backpack, my locker, my folders, whatever they could, and always in a way so it would fall out. Freshman year, they found some picture of a micropenis and went around telling everyone it was me. These guys were total assholes, and I was tired of it. I knew right then that they were never going to address the issue. They would do some sort of half-assed punishment, not even follow through all the way on that, and pretend like nothing was wrong. I was done. I packed a few bags. I had bought my car myself, unlike Daniel, so I loaded it up and left that day. My parents had offered to buy my car when I turned 17 and I declined. I didn't want a car held over me, and on that day my thinking paid off. Renee tried messaging me that day as well, but I blocked her immediately, never speaking to her again. I left that day from my parents' house and have been no contact since. I didn't even attend my high school graduation ceremony. My friend Chris had graduated early back in December and gotten himself a job the next town over. He let me crash with him for a few weeks until my basic training began. I had joined the National Guard without telling my parents. I got shipped off to Georgia for 10 weeks, then to Alabama to begin my training as an air traffic controller. My time in the National Guard was good for me and ended 2 years ago. I now live in Seattle and work as an air traffic controller. My parents have sporadically tried to get in touch with me over the years. I never respond, and block any new means they attempt. My brother recently started reaching out, and I treat him the same. I don't know what they want from me, probably money, but they won't get anything out of me. Daniel's update. I finally got through to my brother. I tried to send him some apologies. I try to be the nice guy, but after cutting off my parents and I for a decade over dumb shit that happened when we were kids, I had enough. I finally just told him off on how much of an asshole he has been over the last decade. He's missed every Christmas, every Thanksgiving. I deep fry a damn good turkey. He has not returned a single phone call, email, anything that whole time. I let him know all that. I told him he was an asshole for not realizing that we were just kids then, and that you gotta get over this stuff. That family stays together and forgives. That the right thing to do would have been to try and work things out, not run off. What I said worked, he messaged me back. He actually agreed with me. We each apologized for what happened in the past. It was good to reconnect with my brother. I even offered him a groomsman spot in my wedding. He told me he would think about it and get back to me. After all these years, it feels good to be a family again. Part 4 Gavin update. Every few months for the past couple of years, my brother Daniel has sent me a random email, usually at like 3 in the morning. I'm still not sure what the hell that's about. This is in addition to the usual message I periodically get from my parents. These tend to coincide with some form of family event, like a wedding. I'm sure more than anything that my absence from the family has damaged the illusion that we are close-knit. I sometimes wonder if they still make excuses for me not being there. I have always ignored and blocked any calls, emails, or DMs I have gotten. I was doing that with my brothers as well, although I do typically read them, mostly in attempts to see what they really want. With my parents, it was always easy. They want us to look like a family. My brother, however, is such a moron. I often have a hard time figuring out what he is getting at. There are always these half-baked apologies, interwoven into long details about his personal life. He once sent me a message that had to be 500 words on his job, which is working the desk at an enterprise rent-a-car. Not shaming anyone's job here. It's just he goes on about the weirdest stuff. Telling me about the mundane ins and outs of a local enterprise dealer is not really necessary in an apology message. If it were funny stories about crazy customers, sure, but I don't really need to know about how important recording the mileage is. He also goes on about his friends and his fishing trips and how good he thinks the grizzlies are going to be. I just don't really get what he wants. One time he bought a hunting rifle and told me every single thing that could possibly be said about this gun. I wasn't sure if he was trying to intimidate me or impress me. I have gotten a few laughs from this, which is good, because at no point have I read anything that sounded like a genuine apology. I guess after 2 years of this, he finally got fed up. I was surprised it went that long. About a week ago, he sent me a message telling me all about his fiancée. This was actually the first I'd heard about him dating since maybe a year after I left. When I didn't respond for 3 days, which I was never going to respond, he ripped into me. The rant I got, for how absurd it was, really pissed me off a lot. Daniel directly said, "You are such an asshole. I can't believe after all this time you are still but hurt about the actions of a dumb kid. We were kids. It's what kids do. They give each other a hard time. I didn't mean any of it. You didn't get hurt. Nobody beat you up. I still got punished every time you snitched on me. It's not like I got away with anything. I don't hold that against you. I forgave you. I get it. You were pissed about Renee, but I did you a favor. She wasn't ready for a relationship then, and I saved you. You need to grow up, if not for me then for mom and dad. You've torn this family apart. That's not what families do. They look out for each other and forgive each other. It just ended there." I was so pissed off reading it. He actually believes I am just as much to blame as him, maybe more so. He downplays everything he did. He will never understand. Unless I make him understand. I decided to reach out to my brother. I apologized and so did he. We talked for a while, and he rambled on about his life the last 10 years. This was mostly him telling me about various times he was drunk in the woods. I also must say it is uncanny how well he can recall how much, and what exactly, he drank on a given night or weekend, even when the event took place years prior. It's like talking to an alcoholic Rain Man. Anyway, I'm going to be a groomsman in his wedding in exactly 3 weeks. It will be the first time seeing him or my parents since just before our high school graduation. I would have let it all go if they had just left me be. I'll take this opportunity to show them what it was like to be me. Update. I got married last weekend, but it was probably not the best idea. I should have called the whole thing off. It was going to be a really nice wedding too, but ended up a total shit show. I mean, we got shrimp for the main course. Shrimp is not cheap. It's like $14 a pound. The food was about the only part of the wedding that went well. I thought everything was going fine. My brother came into town 2 days before, and we got caught up. I guess I probably should have told him that I was marrying his ex-girlfriend from high school, Renee. We haven't been dating this whole time. We just got to dating last year when she needed a rental car after getting rear-ended. She was at a stoplight in front of the BP station on the east side of town, when a teen driver not paying attention plowed into her. She was fine. A little whiplash was all. The car was totaled, and the insurance put her in a rental for a week. She came into the enterprise I work at, and we started talking. She had just ended an engagement, so it was very convenient as the deposit on the place was still there. She just changed the date, just in case we ended up getting married. That was good thinking. Well, Renee and I decided that having traditional bachelor and bachelorette parties would be ideal. They were both on the Friday night right before the wedding. My brother was invited to mine, and told me he would be there. He just never showed up, which bugged me, but it was fine. I ended up drinking 17 Busch Lights and having a great time. It wasn't until the next day that things went wrong. The wedding was at 3 p.m. It was at about 2:30 when I got this Snapchat message from Gavin. It was a video of him banging Renee in the back of a car. The caption just said, "Repaying the favor." Stupid thing was set to just play one time, then it was gone. Then Joe comes running up to me and shows me a snap he just got. It's not graphic like the vid I got, but it's of Gavin in the back of a car with Renee. You can tell from the photo something just happened. Apparently this was either texted or snapped to a lot of the guests. From there all hell broke loose and everyone was arguing. Renee and I got into a huge fight. I was about to walk out of the wedding when she told me she was pregnant. I talked to my parents and hers and Joe. They convinced me that it was the right thing to do for the baby, and we ended up going through with the wedding. Everyone was in a really bad mood though after that, and it wasn't fun at all. I just can't believe my brother would do that to me. One of my friends said it was just like what I did to him, but that's not true at all. I was getting married. She was just his girlfriend back then. Renee and I are figuring it out. She took a test right in front of me, and she really is pregnant. Anyway, all of this is Gavin's fault, and I've decided to never speak to him again. Update. I got to my brother's house on Thursday night before the wedding on Saturday. I already knew that he was marrying my high school girlfriend Renee. Their wedding announcement and stuff were all over their social media, which they have set to public. Still, I acted surprised. I knew Renee had mostly lost her mind since high school. All the years we went to school together, she had always been the quiet, blend into the background kind of girl. I don't know what happened to her in her early 20s, but her social media is mostly rants about what a real man is paired with a sports bra selfie. Seeing Daniel for the first time in a decade made me all the happier. Not for any sentimental reasoning, it's just that he is so out of shape. He had a full beer gut going. There was no definition in his arms or shoulders. He has completely let himself go. We have pretty much switched roles since high school. Granted, I was never overweight, just very scrawny back then. I looked around and noticed a few pictures of kids on the walls. When I inquired, I found out that Renee had 2 kids from 2 previous relationships. I almost called off my plan. If this was going to break up a chance for kids to have a better life, I'd just head back home in the morning. As it turns out though, Renee is somewhat of a deadbeat parent. I guess each of them lives with their fathers pretty much full time, and she only sees them every few weeks. I listened to my brother apologize for taking things too far. Sometimes in high school, I went ahead and gave him a faux apology for cutting them off for a decade. I didn't mean one word of it, but if I was going to make them understand, I had to play the part. The most difficult challenge of this whole thing was spending this night with Daniel. Listening to him tell the same story over and over was challenging. It wasn't really the same story over and over, it just felt like it. This guy has literally spent the last decade hanging out with the same 2 or 3 guys, getting drunk, watching sports, and telling the same jokes. The odd fishing or camping story was the only break in what was honestly nothing more than a chronicle of all the different types of alcohol he's consumed. Not going to lie, though, I am actually impressed how well he can recall what he drank on a random Friday in March of 2019. I survived the night and prepped for the bachelor party, or should I say bachelorette party, the next night. I was never going to show up to Daniel's party. I was always going to Renee's. I just had to spend the night prior to learn what all the plans were. It didn't take much. I showed up at the club her and her few girlfriends were at. Naturally, she came over to talk to me. I quickly led the conversation to our time together. She apologized and made up some nonsense about missing those days. Eventually, she let a small complaint about Daniel out. That was the opening I needed. I went ahead and pulled out my old phone from high school. Life lesson, everyone: never throw away an old phone. There were all the texts he ever sent me about Renee to insult me, calling her a dog face, an anorexic whore bag, and his most usual term, the thing. She looked upset, and I asked if she wanted to go talk in private. She said yes, and we went out to her car. Didn't take much of a nudge. Really just said something about what bachelorette parties were for, and she was pulling her dress off. As I was departing, she asked me not to tell Daniel because she was pregnant and didn't want to lose another father. I had what I wanted, so I agreed and headed back to the hotel. I showered and slept until 5 a.m. Got up early and caught a flight back to Seattle. When 12:30 my time rolled around, I sent all the messages I needed to. I'm sure all hell broke loose. I know it did, because I got exactly what I wanted. Both my brother and my parents sent me messages saying I was dead to them, the same as they have been to me for 10 years. I'm sure our dirty laundry, being aired like that to the whole family, was the greatest humiliation for my parents. I don't feel bad at all. The only regret I have is not getting to personally see the fallout. They asked for this. I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with them, but they persisted. Hopefully this is it, and I will never hear from them again.